Okay, good morning. Good afternoon. It's afternoon already. I swear, sometimes these days just fly by like that, don't they? Did you catch that? You catch how I just jumped in with the I swear? No, I really I'm hoping that this class gave us some things to talk about today. We've got quite a bit actually. Uh, I could only cover so much in this class. What's so incredible about the subject is it is pervasive in Scripture. We see example after example after example. Hopefully, this clarified a few things, but I'm curious of everything that I brought up. You know, I brought in things from the Gospels, from the book of James. I'm interested in what your take is on any number of things that we covered in today's class. So, if you have thoughts about the class on swearing, the ancient art of swearing, raise your hand, jump right into it, because I think this is going to be a pretty engaging talk. So I've got Julia already ready to jump in. Julia, how are you today? Shabbat Shalom, my friend.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly well. Good to see you.
Okay. All right. I might as well say it. I wanted to kick it off. It One of the things is when you went to the point of raising your hand, it made me think of why we do this in court. Well, we
Yeah,
used to do it.
right.
Why we did it in court. The other thing that it made me think is because it became, I guess the way you said it is, don't do it at all.
Yeah,
It feels to me, um, well, it makes me raise a question.
okay.
Was that put out, and is it such a thing because there is an intent to deceive? And somehow in this world, in our hearts, we know that it is a really big deal to do it in God's name.
Yeah,
And so, you know, it feels like if someone could say they could stand on anything else they did and try to justify anything else they did, but there would be no justification for swearing falsely in God's name. And that's why they say no,
yeah.
no, because you couldn't get past that. Like when you said it seems to be a higher level, it's another level, it's another
Mm-hmm.
level.
Yeah. I,
Yeah.
I think you're on to something. I mean, look, if again, and I kind of tried to make the point. I think you made it better than I did, but it's the idea that if you're not going to do it right, then you would be better off just to not do it
Yeah.
at all. But
Yeah.
but having said that, the reason anytime I think about this or I talk about this, I do find Jeremiah chapter 4 to be very interesting because it almost seems like it's saying, well, it doesn't almost seem like it's saying, it is saying that if you want to bring this redemption about, here's what has to happen. And I think maybe beyond getting the formula exactly right. I mean, I spent a lot of time talking about how was the formula. I don't picture God as sitting there with his arms crossed and shaking his head like, nope, that's not quite right. But by the same token, it could be that the main point is to be honest. I mean, how many
Yeah.
of the prophetic texts say, be honest with one another, don't lie, don't
Yeah.
cheat, don't steal? So
Yes.
that's the goal. We should. I get the words of Jesus and Philo and other rabbinic writers and the Book of James. I get the idea that they're basically saying what you and I are saying, Julia. Just look, just tell the truth. Yet let your yes be yes and your no no, and be done with it. So I
Yeah.
guess I guess that's part of it. But man,
Yeah.
if there are certain texts that make you think maybe I should do this way.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. All right, Todd and Angel, how are you, my friends?
Shabbat Shalom, Ross.
Shabbat shalom.
You was looking awfully dapper this morning with your fort coat.
You see how long that lasted, don't you? We have a we have an air conditioner unit that just in this building isn't quite, so that jacket was for looks only. And now that I've won the hearts of everyone with that jacket, this is all you got.
If you start wearing a tie, I'm gonna get a little concerned.
I might do that next week, man, just to keep you stirred.
I just have a little comment here. You know, you first started about not swearing an oath, not swearing at all, and then later you started showing evidence of swearing by an oath, and it got me to thinking: is it an oath or is it a promise? And if it is a promise, is there really a difference between an oath and a promise?
Excellent. There's no, people can look at the words Shiva or Neder, and you can say, well, one means a vow, one means this, and one is an oath and this, but both of those, if you peel back the technical language, whatever, it comes back to the person making the statement, and both, no matter which direction you come, no matter what the term is called, you're ultimately seeking from that person's lips to be true. And so, right. It's we as people of the book, we as believers, whether we are formally on the stand with our hand raised, or we're using God's name, or we're not using God's name, or we're just saying yes or no, I should be able to say, well, that's Todd and Angel. I know them. They're not lying. Maybe Todd, but definitely not Angel. But you could, you know what I'm saying? No, but that's really where it comes down to is anytime we speak, it ought to be the truth. And there really isn't a word, like a lot of times if you look at the word promise, and I haven't done this, but I would suppose that we're going to find the same root words underneath that, because again, I mentioned this in the class. I wanted to know, I really want to know, what's the etymology of the word sheen bait ayin? What does that really mean? And because it does mean seven, where it's clearly obvious where it means seven, I brought 7 ewe lambs or whatever, or sometimes it's associated with weeks, a period of 7 days. But the point becomes, some of these people speculate that the meaning of an oath must be related in some way to sevens. Mm-hmm. But we don't know that. So it really comes down to our word is our honor. We should tell the truth no matter what you call it.
You're talking about the sheen bait ayin.
Yeah.
In paleo, that would be teeth, house, and the eye. So it's kind of unique. Teeth, you grab onto something with teeth.
And others have proposed that, and they're far more knowledgeable in that than I am.
I'm currently reading some of his stuff.
Yeah. And I do think that there isn't, just to kind of touch on that comment, there is sort of a touch, a process, a transition from pictographs, if you will, into using these letters to actually write out words. And, I'm reminded when I was a kid and I listened to rock music, one of the things, and I still might today every now and then, I don't listen to much music, but I remember somebody saying, if you take, and you've heard other bands, if you take Judas Priest and you play it backwards, you're going to get all this stuff, and you're like, my goodness, you put Judas Priest on frontwards. You don't have to wind it back. So my point is that a lot of times in the Hebrew, we'll take a word that gives plenty of meaning in its trilateral root, the 3-letter root, and we don't even have to go any further. But I'm interested in what people come up with, because there could be, we haven't quite proven that transitional step, but it is certainly interesting to think of. And like when Angel said the house, if you're talking about house of God, well, would that or not be where you might take an oath? It could be, I don't know. It's beyond my level of study. So,
well, I think I thought about that because if I, as far as for myself, if I think of Jehovah's character, why would he swear an oath, but he would give a promise?
Yeah.
Yeah, he would. He definitely keeps a promise. I don't know why he would need to swear an oath, because swearing an oath to me would be kind of similar to like proving something to somebody.
Yeah.
I'll give you an oath and prove to you that I don't see where he needs to do that. But giving a promise to me just seems to make more sense.
And it could be, Todd, it might be that we are just making these ideas. And I thought the same kind of thing as I worked through the study. We might be imposing our understanding of the distinction between promise and oath today versus, I know that some people will go to a court, and they still do this, at least where I live, and you put your hand on the Bible, I swear to tell it, or raise your right hand and repeat after me. So that kind of thing, you say, well, that's an oath. But if you object to making an oath, a lot of Christians would say, I'm sorry, Judge, I can't do that. Well, now in court, they add, or if you just want to promise, I'm going to tell the truth. I'm not going to make an oath. Well, that distinction, again, is something that we've developed. But again, anytime whether you're making a vow, it's like the book of Numbers, chapter 30, anything that comes out of your mouth, I think is the way it puts it. Let me look at that again. Let me see if I'm right there. I think it says in Numbers chapter 30, when a man makes a vow to the Lord. Now that's the word neder, or swears an oath to bind himself by a pledge, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth. So in my view, this is just my thought on that distinction. If your lips are moving and you're one of the faithful, you ought to be telling the truth, right? So that's kind of... Now, back to God, I do think that whatever this word sheen bait ayin, however it's translated, we say oath, but far more times than not, it's God making the oath more than anyone in the Hebrew Bible. And it's always, here's what I'm going to do, because we do associate the making of an oath with the covenant. You're binding yourself to a covenant, and I didn't get into the details of that in this class, but that's part of what we have to really consider when we're talking about this. So when you make an oath, Deuteronomy 26 is an example. The people are making an oath with God. God, you've promised to vouchsafe us as your people, and we're going to do this. You're going to do this, and we're going to do this. So that's kind of the idea. I think that's my view anyway.
Well, your take on Judas Priest. You're getting old when you go into a shopping center or like a Kroger's, and they're playing Judas Priest in the background. That's when you know you're getting old. Oh,
I'll tell you. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons I know I'm getting older, but music is certainly one of them. But yeah, good stuff.
And on a lighter note, I also wanted to thank everybody for their kind words this past week and everything. So we're just in the process of getting everything taken care of. But other than that, I appreciate everybody doing that.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up. I have it on my list, but I certainly was going to allow you guys to do that. Our prayers are still with you guys and your families, and we know that these are tough times. So our prayers with you, brother and sister.
Well, I appreciate that. And I got something else, but I'll wait for later. It's a little bit different subject from last week. So.
Okay. All right. Good deal. Yep.
I'd like to say something. You were talking about when they have forbidden people to make an oath. I wonder if that has to do with them building fences around the commandments, and because there are certain things I could think of if you I swear this is happening, or this has happened, but then you were unaware that you actually that didn't happen.
Yeah. No, that's an excellent point. And it's one of the things that I thought about too. It's like if we said, don't even think about it, we add strictness to, but we see it in the biblical text all the way from the very beginning. Don't eat that. Don't even touch it. You say, well, that's a good idea. If you don't touch it, then you certainly won't eat it. Well, I mean, there's some truth in all of that. So in this sense, maybe it goes back to what Julia and I were saying, where, you get the idea that if you're not, and maybe Jesus and James meant this, and that second temple period, we see others. So we have Philo and others just saying, look, it's best just don't even do it. Probably because we have a tendency in our societies, and maybe at the time people were walking around saying, no, I swear to God, this is true. It's comes out in language. We hear it all the time. That's not to be taken lightly. And so maybe the strictness that's added to it, Angels, just like you say, that it's just if you don't even swear at all. That way you don't break this command.
Safeguard.
That's right. That's right. Good stuff. All right. Well, hang around. Come back in whenever you want. Charles Sutton. How you doing, brother?
Oh, good. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
I can hear you. It sounded a little bit garbled, but let's try it again. Everybody
I've been having a little bit of problem with this phone.
Okay.
Garbled both directions sometimes. So I'll make it short and sweet. Thank you for this class. It was wonderful. This message needs to get out, particularly towards those who think that when God swore he was going to give the land to certain people, they probably messing up if they think they're going to overcome him.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Dr. T. We missed you. Thank you,
That's
Seth,
it.
for all the work you do. Now take my garbly phone off on it.
Well, it only got garbly when you said garbly, so maybe it's fixed now.
It's been giving me trouble a couple days. It's okay.
Good stuff.
Great class, Ross. Great class.
Hey, thank you, Charles. Thanks for your support and friendship, man. Good deal.
Hoo-ah.
Hoo-ah. All right, Claudia, let me unmute you. How are you, my sister?
I'm good. How are you, my brother?
I'm doing wonderfully. Good to see you. Shabbat shalom.
Thank you for the class. Shabbat shalom. Welcome back, Dr. James. We missed you.
That's right.
And I want to thank you, Ross, because when this class was about to begin, I was talking with somebody, and I was thinking that I never thought of this theme. I don't know how relatable this class will be to me. And I finished like, wow, I can't believe it. This talks to me a lot. And I had some itty bitty thoughts, and I would like to share them.
I want to hear them.
Yeah, first of all, I think that we live in times where political correctness is more important than saying the truth. And that means saying lies in a legal way. So I think that it's very important to know what meaning what you say is. And us Albanians, we often take pride in a word that means safe or trust, and that is besa. Albanian besa is the word, the heavy word, like oath, like when I say something, I mean it, and you can rely.
Yeah.
And I think that is what is happened to this society. People don't mean what they say. And that is a big flag, because people are not hold it accountable for what they say and then what they do. And I wanted also to relate this thought with how hurricanes and storms and earthquakes make us feel. Whenever something like that happens, we feel uneasy and we feel like we cannot depend on the earth where we have our feet on. And that is a very bad feeling. Uncertainty is something very bad. During the pandemic, they say that the frequencies, the human frequencies went below because of the fear. And when people are happy, and when people are secure, feel secure, their frequencies go, they say, go higher. And when people have high frequencies, they can be happy, joyful, and seek God. And what I got out of this class is that men, and I mean human beings, men during ancient periods had a little bit more besa, a little bit more. You could trust them. You could have faith in whatever they would say, and that is how I think that people could be blessed in Israel happen. Because even if 50 people were righteous in Sodom and Gomorrah, God would have spared them. That means that even if we have 50 people that keep their word, that are trustful, then there is hope. And what else? Yeah, I think that perhaps it's time to have clean lips.
Yep.
Because with unclean lips, we are usually doing the opposite of whatever we have to do, because perhaps words might have power. They say that they made an experiment with 2 seeds of the same flower, or I don't know, plant, and they cursed one of the seeds, and they blessed the other seed, or said compliments and really beautiful words. And the complimented flower became good and healthy, and the other one got rotten.
Yep.
So perhaps words, this is only food for thought. Perhaps words are a little bit more powerful than we think. And 2 little things. As you were reading Zechariah 5 about the scroll, I saw that these are words 6 and 7 in Moses' scroll.
Yes.
I thought, oh, this must be the same page, like the same sheet,
Yep.
right?
A fragment of the scroll.
It was like, oh, 6 and then 7. It was like, perhaps that gives us a vision of how the original scroll looked like. And the last one, food for thought again. Perhaps the stretched arm of Yehovah might be an oath.
Interesting. All those points are interesting. Let me touch a couple of them quickly before you go. Number one, spell in letters this Albanian word, because there's a connection. B-E-S.
B-E-S-A.
Okay. So you may know this, but the Hebrew word for confidence or trust or faith in is betach. Betach.
No, I didn't know.
Yeah,
that.
so it's bait, tet, het. And that, I think there might be a connection there. You know, a lot of times we find connections between ancient Hebrew and the languages on our planet. And this is interesting because you've given me a couple of Albanian words that have connected. Yeah, so interesting. One other point, you mentioned frequencies. I'll be honest, a couple of years ago, that would not have entered my mind as being that important. But 2 women in my life, my mother and my wife, in the past couple of weeks have sent me different videos about clothing and the frequencies of clothing. And so what I'm looking for now, I don't have the money to do this, but I will. I'll shop around if I can find things like linen, which I've read that and there's a Torah. It's a priestly text, but there's a text that says not to mix this fabric with this fabric. Well, people now, we have scientifically determined that there are things to this, like if you wear a polyester and it's mixed or man-made or plastic, as opposed to a linen shirt. So anyway, I've got a pair of linen pants that one of my girls found, my wife probably found at a thrift store. And so, hey, we're going to start doing it. And maybe that's why. So there's more to this frequency stuff than meets the eye. Good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Betty, how are you? You should be good to go.
I'm trying to
There it
unmute.
is. You're unmuted.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom, you guys.
Shabbat Shalom.
As always, well, you know me, I get emotional, but I love you and I love the teaching. What's wrong with me? Anyway, Cody always makes me smile, and I noticed Cody is wearing her white today. I always wear white on Shabbat. It's just been a tradition with me, and I love it. And at the last conference, I was just talking to Cody, and she just mentioned something about my white outfit, and I said, "Yeah, I do this every Shabbat." She said, "Oh, I think I'm going to do that too." So anyway, and that has nothing to do with clothing frequency. It's just a sweet thing between the two of us. I call her my little sister, and she calls me her big sister.
There you go.
So, just a little personal thing. Well, first of all, the class was amazing. Is not even a good word. It was just so insightful and so helpful in clearing up so many things about swearing and using the name of Yod He Vav He. So I wanted to ask you, if you are going to swear, the connection between, it says that Hashem lifts up his hand. Do we lift up our hand? It talks about lifting up holy hands to him when we're praying.
Yeah.
So is there a connection between lifting up our hands, our right hand, and swearing? Just swearing, Yehovah Kai, you are one. Is that an example of how you would swear today? And forgive me if I did it wrong.
No, I think that the formula is interesting because whenever God uses it, he says, according to the text, Chai Ani, or Chai Anochi, as I live. We get this phrase. And by the way, I'll post these. Look, I can't tell you how many verses that I had that I just, if you do a full study where you look at every reference, but there are quite a few. Ezekiel's just filled with where God says, as I live, as I live. The image, and it could be that the image comes later than the act, because a lot of people would argue, well, does God even have a hand? It's symbolic, it's metaphorical, it represents. Maybe that language got into the text because we, for whatever reason, raise our hand. Now, here's another idea that I read, and it may have something to do. When you get into a covenant with someone and you make that, look, I made her mad. No, I'm joking. She's probably getting Baraka.
Oh, don't my run. Gosh, my dog got out. I've got to go.
Go ahead. I'll catch up with you later. And everyone pray that she finds Baraka. She's probably just right there waiting on Mama to take her for a walk, I hope. But the idea could be that when people make an oath, when they make a covenant one with the other, you would perhaps raise your hand to show that it was empty of a weapon. You're making, and this is one of the thoughts in antiquity, and it could be where we get that original idea from. So that's just something to think about. And we'll make sure. Looks like she's got a doggy in her arms. Good job. See, there you
Hey,
go. So
I'm back.
thank God. Okay.
She
So what I
squeezed
just said,
herself.
I just
She
said I'll
squeezed
give it to you.
herself through the patio. Go ahead.
I'll just say quickly what I just told them. It's
Yeah,
that it
sorry.
could be that the raising of the hand associated with the oath was not something that someone saw in a vision in the throne room, but more likely
Right.
came from a covenant between men and men, like Avimelech and Abraham, or Jacob and Laban. And the idea is that you come together, you're negotiating peace, really. You're coming together and you're maybe perhaps raise your hand to show that it's free of weapons. That's the idea. Now, if one is going to make an oath, again, I think there's a reason that we should consider the words of Philo, Jesus, and James here. But if a person were to do that, you know, I don't think certainly there's anything wrong with following that practice. And we do it in court today, as we've discussed. So,
Right.
yeah. Anyway.
Well, there is one other thing,
Yep.
and I don't have a Hebrew fonts, and I wish I did, to illustrate this, because I think it's very interesting. In the Hebrew, the word shecher, which is false,
Yeah.
and emet. If you print them out in Hebrew or look them up, sheker is with a shin, a kof, and a resh.
Yeah.
And if you can visualize those, they all stand on one leg. Okay. So, and then emet is ayin, mem, and tav, and they stand on two legs. I just thought that was interesting that you see a visual picture, if you're looking at it, as to what is truth, what is standing firm, and what is like teetering because it's not stable.
It's certainly a good description of truth versus lie, isn't it?
Yes, true. And today, as many of you know, is the Sabbath of Return, Shabbat Shuvah, which comes between Yom Teruah, or as in Jewish tradition, Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur. So perhaps in order, and you know, we read Hosea 14, which says, "Return to me," and several other places. But just thinking, well, maybe we would need to also return to swearing by the name of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. But to me, I guess it's a little scary. I wouldn't want to do it wrong. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's always, we can't go wrong with what we're doing here, where you say, if you don't do it, then you certainly can't mess it up. Is that fair?
Well, and that's what I've done too, you know, all my life. But anyway, it's just, this is my favorite time of year, and especially a couple of weeks from now when we get into Sukkot, because it is truly a time of joy.
Absolutely.
We are commanded to have. So how do you command joy? Any ideas? How can you command joy? You build it within yourself by all of the blessings that your God has given you. And you speak of good things, and you know, the joy of the Lord is my strength, from Nehemiah. And so, anyway, that just a few things.
This is my favorite time of the year too. I love it. And, you know, depending on whether someone follows the standard Jewish calendar or the sighting of the moon, which was just reported, or both, if you're all things to all men, as Brother Paul was, we're in the time Josephus calls the holy month, right? So it's certainly the 7th month, and this is the time where all of those major festivals, at least, or most of the major festivals, fall. So good stuff.
And by the way, I do talk to my flowers and my plants, and if anybody, I posted some of them online. They are healthy, alive, and they're beautiful, and they make me so happy.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Anyway,
agree. I love plants.
I do too. All right. Thanks, y'all.
Hey, good stuff. Shabbat shalom, Betty.
Shabbat shalom.
And Karen. Hello, Karen. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I just, I'm always trying to think about what this looks like in real life. And I can see two parties if they're making a contract and one party isn't willing to swear in the name of God. Maybe the other party isn't going to want to do the deal.
Yeah.
And then I'm always thinking about, what kind of power does this name have? Does it really have power, or is it just the power we give it? And it makes me think of Zechariah 3, where God uses his own name as an incantation to rebuke the Satan.
Interesting text.
Yeah, and it's like, did the people, the writers of the text, did they have this idea that there was this kind of power? And I see that used in, I was raised in the Christian church, and they do this.
Yeah.
I know that's a word to use, but it is proper English, and that is what they're doing. They're using the power that they think is in this name to cast demons out, to move mountains, to
Sure.
it's always. And is there a similar idea going on here?
Could very well be. And let me just add to that, not only did in antiquity the name become associated almost with magical incantations and talismans and so forth, but you get curse as well can be associated with the name. Recently, last year in particular, in fact, his book, Gershon Galil, just published his book. It's pretty expensive, as most academic books are, but he published his book about the this lead inscription, this little piece of lead that was found at Mount Ebal, as people have identified it. And it associates a form of the divine name, not the tetragrammaton, but the three-lettered form, if his reading is right. That's the whole other thing, with a curse. So people began to call that name in to use for blessing and curse. And we certainly see that peak in the monarchical period, even in the biblical text. This is what I began to notice. The more I deal with the text and I consider the academic approach, the critical historical approach, you can see things really spike in that monarchical period. And really in the 7th century BCE. That's what we see with the use of the name. Now, when does the name become known? Well, even the Pentateuch admits that it's in the days of Moses, at least. But we have evidence that maybe it was later than that, even, because we don't have theophoric names in the Pentateuch that include God's name. Even the chief characters, like Israel is Yisrael, see? So, but you don't have Yisrayahu or anything like that. That comes way, way later in the text. So, but I agree that it could be that these names are associated with the blessing and the curse, almost a magical incantation.
Yeah. And I'm always saying maybe this might be taken the wrong way, but I don't believe in magic.
Yeah.
But I do believe in that words and names have power, but they have the power that you give them.
Right.
They have the power that the culture gives them. They have the, if I live in a town and there's a mayor and I say, well, use the name of the mayor, that's going to have some sort of power over the people that live there because they fear this, the individual or the.
We call that in modern times name dropping, don't we? But I guess anciently it would be name lifting. So you're going to lift a name as opposed to dropping a name. But either way would work. It's funny, even when David goes out to fight Goliath in the story in 1 Samuel, he says, you come at me in this, and I come at you in the name of the God of the armies of, So it's this idea in antiquity that there is power in the name. Sounds like an old Baptist hymn I used to sing. But there really is. And look, look, a lot of people have appealed to those types of prayers. And I don't knock that, because I do know what you mean when you said what you said, but I also know that people are, in a way, you're appealing to the power much greater than we are, and you're asking for that one to intervene on our behalf. And I think that's really where this goes back to. So who knows?
I think there is something to be said by expressing to other people who you represent.
Say that again. Are you asking what? Say that again.
There is, a type of, I don't know if I want to say power, but there is something to expressing to other people that you're communicating with who you represent, like David is doing with Goliath.
Mm-hmm. It certainly puts you on that side. It certainly makes it clear to the other person, and you're appealing to your own faith. Like I think David is saying, look, I have faith that this God is going to save me. I don't need anything. I can use a little slingshot and take you out. But it also, you read the text, and certainly in the ancient cultures, people were scared when they heard about this God. Here comes this God, Yahweh or Jehovah. He's coming into town, and we heard stories about what it did in Jericho, and we heard this and we heard that. So I think that your name dropping certainly goes a long way, especially if it's attached to victories in other places. His God, it's funny because one of the things the biblical writers did, and I think it's great, is that they tell us that the Exodus is where God made a name for himself. And I think that I think that the story is true. I think that the Exodus happened, and I think that the miraculous elements particularly, and just the fact that this ragtag group leaves Egypt, as it said, and makes it into another land and dispossesses them, however long that takes, I think that would, I don't want to say conjure up, but that would bring up this association. Your reputation precedes you. Well, God made a name for himself during the Exodus, and God's name, his reputation, because we say name, but it's more than that. The reputation of this God preceded him. So,
right. Even in the New Testament, when Paul is going to be arrested, and he's like, "Well, I'm a Roman citizen." Everyone's like, that has power in it, saying I represent Rome. Yeah, depends on who you're with and what that means to them.
That's right. That's right. Good stuff. Good stuff. What else, Karen? Hit us with some more. Got anything else off the top of your head right now?
Nope, that's it.
Well, look, that was a perfect segue. You bring in Paul. I happen to have somebody here that knows a little bit about Paul. Dr. James Tabor, welcome back, friend. Wait, I'm sorry. Hold on. Let me, there we go.
You got us controlled here. So good to see everybody. Hold on a second. My dog wants in.
All right.
No.
These Tabors and their dogs. Look, here we go.
Yeah. No, she didn't. Does anybody know why that little on Zoom, like when Karen was talking, a little thumbs down appeared on my screen? Why does that happen?
I don't know.
It's not reading my mind because I like what she said. No, did you see that?
I did see it. Yeah. I don't know.
Sometimes if you go like this.
Yeah, sometimes I've heard that it's watching, maybe somebody on the screen did that, and let's see if it picks it up. I don't know. Either way, we're past that.
Yeah, we are. So just a few things. It's actually close to some of the things Karen mentioned, expanded. I had to go away during part of your talk, but I think you were going through text, so you probably didn't mention this. Just a few things here. One is I've got a constitution here, and I guess the most powerful oath in terms of our social and political world would be the President of the United States. So I'll read it to you. The original, I don't think said affirm, but now affirm is added in parentheses in this printed copy. So I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. And David Tyler just mentioned, him taking a similar oath for whatever purposes he was doing it for. Ross has done it in the Army and so forth. So we all know that oath. It sounds like the affirm is put in for Christians who are picking up on what Jesus said in Matthew that you read, also in James. Just say yes or no. So you're allowed to say, I swear or affirm. The amazing thing about that is before you say, and then they add now, it's not in the Constitution, so help me God. Okay, but that's not in the oath. But every president I can remember does that at the end. And often a Bible is involved in our culture.
Right.
So if we ever get a Muslim president, I guess it would be the Quran. But the point is, you add something, so help me God, or you have a book with your hand on it or something. But the amazing thing, just the oath, because that's all the Constitution calls for, changes you from having the nuclear codes to not having them, simply saying that. So to me, that's the best example. Another would be a wedding. I called up the most common wedding vows, which are the Episcopal Church. You've seen it in every movie all your life and so forth. I, James, do take you, Lori, to be my wife or husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish till death do us part, and according to God's holy law is in the Episcopal, and some leave that out. In the presence of God, I make this vow. Now that's modern. It used to say, I plight my troth, which is the old English way of saying it. It's very similar. But plight my troth means I make my pledge. And here you have this word values, which is the scary word in the Torah, like watch out if you're going to make a vow. We had a friend, he's passed away now, Ross and I, a very good friend, very close friend, Amitzia Gabori, who's the son of Moses Gabori, with whom David Horowitz studied in the 1920s and 30s up to the 1940s, as some of you know. Amitzia would always say to Ross and to me and to Ralph and to Dennis Jones, if he was going to do something, and we kind of liked it. So sometimes we started saying it just for fun. I'd say, well, Ross, I'm going to come down to St. Francisville next weekend without a vow.
Yeah.
He would always add that, without a vow. And what he's reflecting, I don't think he knew this, but it was the book of James. In the previous chapter 4, come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to St. Francisville in such a town or place, and we'll spend a year there, and we'll trade and get gain. You don't know about tomorrow. What is your life? You're a mist that appears for a little time and vanishes away. Instead, this is the brother of Jesus talking. Maybe his mother taught him this. That's what I tend to think. If the Lord wills, we shall live and we shall do this or that. And so that's an interesting little caveat that's added, just when we say common things. Then we have also, just among kids, everything from pinky pledge to blood brothers to just do you promise? Whenever somebody says something, like if I say to Ross, something of weight, he might want to make sure that I'm not just hoping to do it. Maybe he's counting on it. Ross, I'm going to send you $1,000 on Monday. I know you have some bills.
You swear to God, James?
I'm not going to really do this, Ross, so don't ask me to promise. He might just say, well, I really appreciate that. This doesn't really fit with Ross and me, because if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. But you know how you've done it. You say, do you promise? When we're really serious, we say this to people. I bet every one of us has done it. Do you promise to do that? I want to know we're really talking about the truth there, because we all say things. But do you promise? Usually you will answer, to the best of my ability, just like the
Yeah.
Notice the constitutional oath says to the best of my ability. We all have ability and disability. Then the Pledge of Allegiance. I just listed out a bunch of stuff, kind of like Karen did. That's interesting. There you use, I pledge allegiance. You don't say vow, you don't say swear, but you say pledge. And that's similar to the wedding. I give you my troth. That actually means my pledge, my trust. So we have all these ways, a whole bunch of language in English, and every language has that variety. A promise, a pledge. Then let's see, shake on it. How about that? You make a deal. Sometimes it's playful, sometimes it's serious. The real estate deal needs to be signed. But in the old days, during the time of, say, Abraham Lincoln, you didn't always have pen and paper handy. So you would make a verbal agreement and you would shake on it. And the shake meant the signature.
Yeah.
Now you could dispute it later and say, well, you didn't shake. Yes, we did. We shook on it. No, you didn't. You're lying. You didn't shake. We didn't shake on that. It's not firm.
Mm-hmm.
But people trusted one another in those days, right? We say things like, his word is his bond. Her word is her bond. You don't need anything else. There you have Jesus again. Just if you said yes, yes. If all of those seem to me to all come down to the same thing. They all are different linguistic attempts to say, are you really serious? And did you really think this over?
Yep.
Like it's not just a passing thought. It's not just maybe I'll do this. Are you really serious? Then we get into, well, prove you're really serious. You say, I'm really serious. Will you swear? Swear by what? Swearing has to be by something. You could say, I swear, like the Constitution, I solemnly swear. But apparently in practice, people want to add at the end, they feel it's better to say, so help me God. So there, you're invoking God. So as some of you have remarked, even in the chats earlier when Ross was teaching, it seems to all come down to the same thing, personal integrity with speech, right?
Yep.
And basically not bearing false witness is one way to say it, probably the best way to say it. I'm witnessing to something, I'm affirming it, I'm saying it, I'm pledging it. You got 10 different words, but then what I really want to know is that, do you feel, not really are you bound by it, but are you telling me this because you feel bound by it? Like your intention is to be bound by it. That's what you're trying to get at, right? So do you promise? Do you pledge? And so forth. And I think most of us probably have come to the conclusion that what Yeshua is trying to say in the Q material, that's all the sayings of Jesus material we call often Sermon on the Mount, is if you're going to say something that's of weight, not just trivial, then make sure when you say it that you are serious. Like you have the full intention of doing this, so help you God.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on the seriousness of what it is, from I'm going to come down and see you next weekend, and if you can count on it, I am coming, versus I'm going to try to come, but I've got some other things I got to figure out and so forth. We all do this all the time with everything we do, even in trivial ways with people we live with. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. So that's just a general comment to kind of broaden it out a little bit for everybody. But the vow thing is scary, I think, for us because of those texts about the vows in Judges as well as the Book of Numbers. And we could talk about that. Say your vows to the Lord and so forth. But I still think underlying it is this measure of seriousness or commitment to what you're saying. Yeah. But as Ross said, can you imagine how the world would collapse? There are two things that would make the world collapse tomorrow. One is no coffee on Monday morning. Let's say on Monday. No coffee available on the planet Monday morning. The world would collapse. Ross would collapse. He couldn't make it. The other is if everyone suddenly told the truth tomorrow, the world would collapse. In a way, it would be stronger, but can you imagine? You know, it's that, what was that book? The Man Nobody Knows. Was that Bruce Barton? I think wrote that. It's when a whole town decided that they had to follow the Sermon on the Mount, you know, in every way, and how it just basically destroyed the town.
Wow.
Because nothing could take place because everybody's telling the truth. Now, there are extremes to that, of course, like when people say, well, how do you like my hair? And you think it really looks horrible. And you, oh, I think it looks good on you. Or, you know, I don't know. So there are trivial things, but most of us know. But my goodness, stealing and lying and sexual immorality, isn't it interesting that those are named? Those are the three things that are destroying the world every second, from politicians to just everybody. Not telling the truth, taking what is not yours in about 100 different ways you can do that, even stealing truth from them, and any kind of sexual immorality, which takes the most intimate relationship humans can have and pollutes it in a way that just causes unbelievable damage almost always. So isn't that interesting? Moses scroll, Jeremiah, you lie, you steal, you commit adultery, you swear falsely, and come to this place saying, we are delivered.
Yeah.
We're the people of God. So
always the same stuff.
The
Hey, good stuff, James. Good to have you back. I know you've been back a little while, but all right. Let's see, Nadine. I'm going to hit the unmute. Hey, Nadine, how are you?
Hi, Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Those celebrating and Chag Sameach, Yom Teruah.
Yeah.
So I raised my hand because I wanted to bring up the term integrity, and James has done that now. So I just thought it was just so important. And there is no 10 words that says thou shalt not lie. But if you look at the 10 words, lying and having integrity is really interconnected with all of them. And it says don't swear falsely by my name. That's obviously have your yes mean yes and your no mean no, and that's something that along the path of my faith I've taken on seriously and has just changed so much in my life for the positive and connecting it to the integrity. But even if you look at, honor your father and mother, don't lie to your father and mother. If you look at, don't commit adultery, like James said, is be true to the one that you have been joined with. Don't steal, don't lie about who things belong to. And then, don't bear false witness. And that's also very connected to don't lie.
Absolutely.
So it's just like, it's just so connected to all these words that even though it's not explicit, I find it to be maybe even a grand commandment of that part of being to having integrity. And I find that to be really key. And so I'm really glad that this got brought up. That's what I wanted to kind of bring forth. And, even though it's not there explicitly, I wanted to kind of probe your thoughts, Ross, on how important that is. And it's not there explicitly, but is it there somewhere else explicitly, or does it need to be there explicitly? And I just wanted to kind of hear your thoughts on that.
I think because you just presented it perfectly, I think that it is there strongly enough that you discern that idea as being sort of an overarching idea in the biblical text. And if you think about the 10 words as emanating from God at Horeb, this one time where God speaks, and just the idea of truth versus falsehood. Not only when you make this oath, this word, whether you're looking at the canonical text or you're looking at the Shapira manuscript or any other ancient text that says we are the 10 words kind of thing, you get this idea that lying and falsehood is not acceptable and only truth. I was looking at in the Shapira manuscript, like you mentioned in the 10 words according to the Masoretic text, it's don't bear false witness. What does that really mean? Well, it really means what we're talking about. People can say, well, it's specific. I've heard arguments and read arguments that it specifically is dealing with court, but court is only an extension of what we would do in our normal life. You just happen to be before a judge or whatever. But the idea, all of this traces back to our words should represent, we should have integrity. We should tell the truth. And in the Shapira manuscript, instead of saying exactly what it says, don't bear false witness, the language is close, right? But that my English translation says, you shall not respond against your brother with a testimony of deceit. I am Elohim, your Elohim. And then the blessing is, blessed is a man who does not deal falsely and does not practice deceit with his neighbor. And then the curse is, cursed is the one who takes a bribe to testify deceitfully against his associate. Different word there, by the way, not neighbor, not brother, associate. So you could get into extrapolating, we're talking about business dealings and life, but I think that truth is something, this Betty brought it up in her comments, the difference in truth and sheker. Jeremiah, this is the end of the Judean kingdom. And one of the most frequently used words in Jeremiah's vocabulary in the book of Jeremiah is sheker. It's a lie. It's a lie. You said God sent you. That's a lie. You're prophesying lying words. You're lying. You're lying. You're lying. Meanwhile, we have the reports that, there's this great revival going on in town and everybody's doing the right thing and no one sinned during all the days of Josiah. And God is saying, that's a lie, that's a lie, that's a lie. So I think that ultimately the true faith depends on truth. It's one of those 5 pillar words in all of the Bible. So that's why people like you, Nadine, who study the text, like me, everyone who's listening, we feel like it's a very strong part of the biblical message because it is. Truth is in all the time. Emmet. And falsehood, lie, sheker is also there. So,
Yeah, I'll add that this is such an important value to us and in our family, like the truth and integrity. And you brought up Jeremiah, and he says, they've done violence to the Torah.
Yep.
And I feel that so much when somebody lies to me. It's like, it's such a big deal, it's really hurtful. And I think I relate to that big time, the hurtfulness of the words. And I think it comes from, because these 10 words are so important to how I live my life.
Yeah.
And because truth is then connected to all of them, so yeah, thanks. I wanted to bring up that integrity word. I think it's so key.
I do too. And one thing, you mentioned you feel violated when someone lies to you because I think James worded it this way. I've said it as well. It's you're robbed of the truth. When someone close to us or even someone we don't know, I mean, one of the biggest parts of people debating in our society today is people say, that was not true. We found out later that all these claims were false. We feel so badly when someone doesn't have integrity and doesn't use the truth in their communication with us. So good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Thank you, Nadine. Doug, how are you? Shabbat shalom. Let's see what you got to add for us. Hey, man.
How you doing, Ross?
I'm doing wonderfully, Doug. This may be the first time that we've spoken. Maybe not, but I mean, I've read your things. We've communicated, but did we meet at the Mount Zion dig?
We did.
Okay, there you go. That's right. See, I just got that
James
spark.
and I sitting outside the Gloria in their little patio area.
That's right. That's right.
Probably enjoying some libation. I don't
Probably.
recall.
Yeah, probably.
Well,
Good to hear you again, though. Good to hear you.
I wanted to follow up on what Nadine had been saying and James before, kind of circling around the idea of integrity in speech. And it got me thinking about, you brought it up, Ross, during the presentation, the etymology of Shin Bet Ayin.
Yep.
And that's the word used, translated swear. The thing that strikes me is it's not the word say, Amar.
Right.
It's unique to these situations where, on the one hand, you're going to profess something, and on the other hand, oftentimes, it's in the name of Jehovah.
Yeah.
Right? So it's an elevated profession. And I'm just wondering if there isn't something significant etymologically about 7 and swear. Perhaps it's getting at something like something beyond just truthful, but pure, complete, lacking nothing. Pure. I don't know. I'm just speculating.
Well, no, let me. I just didn't want to interrupt you because you're hitting a point that other deep thinkers and other linguists have suggested, and it may be exactly right. So let's say that there is a reason that the word for that we translate oath is also the reason the same word that we translate 7. Could they be connected? And one of the proposals is that 7 represents this idea. You said lacking nothing. It's complete. That is an idea that I've seen. What I personally haven't found is something that seals that deal for me, that says, yes, that's what it means. But I can see how it could be connected, that 7 represents this wholeness and completeness and so forth. In fact, if my memory isn't failing me, we have 2 different stories about the naming of Beersheba. And one draws on one definition, one draws on the other. So it's almost as if both ideas are floating around in the ancient writer's mind. So we do get this idea. I think also that Nehemiah Gordon, during Shavuot, has proposed, and others have as well, that there is an association not only as the Feast of Weeks. We come to know it as a Feast of Weeks, and it's these 7 sevens, and so you call it Shavuot. But there's also a connection that Nehemiah and others have written that shows that time is often associated, even though it's not specifically spelled out, with the making of oaths. If Shavuot in Sivan, or the third month, is when this covenanting takes place at Horeb, could there be a connection there? So the thing is, we just don't know, or I don't know for certain, if there is a connection between the two, but you may be on to exactly what it is. And perhaps it's, as the writer in Hebrew Aramaic Lexicon of the Old Testament says, that these how did he put it? It's like these ancient ideas. We just simply don't know what they mean, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
or how deep they go.
right, right.
You know, if by saying I 7 to you,
Yeah,
aren't you saying I perfectly profess?
could be.
I purely profess.
Hmm.
Anyway, that's the vibe I'm getting off the word.
Hey, it's a good vibe, and you're in good company because there are some associations that are made along the same lines. I'm just looking for. Here it is in Halot. It's called. This writer called it fossilized formulas. The comment was when it comes to these fossilized formulas, meaning like Chai Yehovah and Chai Elohim. It says it's not possible to explain the original sense of the words, but context seems to say that when one would make this oath, and the oath would always be as Jehovah lives. What you're saying is, as Jehovah is alive, the one to whom I appeal and make this statement in the presence of, as that one lives, so my words are true. You know,
Mm,
and I
mm,
think I
mm.
think there's really power in that. You're really
Yeah,
appealing to, I'm telling you the truth as strongly as I can. And for someone to do that and not mean it, woo, that's a bad deal.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Bad deal. Hey,
Yeah,
good
I think that's right.
comments though. I appreciate it. Anything else, Doug? All right. Nikita, how are you, my friend? Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, my friend. How are you?
I am doing wonderfully. It's good to hear your voice today.
Well, thank you. It's good to be heard. I love the class, and I'm gonna stay long. My sister had this caveat to people who would swear to her. 'Cause when we were kids, it was really common. It was like, I swear to God, this is true. I swear to God, I swear to God.
Yeah.
My sister had this caveat that was like, no, don't do that. Swear on your life.
Yeah.
Swear on your life because I don't know your God. So swear on your life. And when they wouldn't swear on their lives, she knew they were lying.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yes, because to some people, God is this entity that may or may not exist, or if it was the way she explained it was perfect, and I wish I could remember, but she was like, no, I don't know your God, so swear on your life. And if they wouldn't swear on their lives because that was more real, more tangible to them,
Yeah.
then she was like, no, we're good. I don't want to have anything to do with you because you would be flippant about God's name. I mean, you would swear in vain because you don't believe it or you don't feel the weight of it that I feel. And like Miss Karen was saying before, well, it would almost be a personal thing as to how you define that.
Yeah.
So if you're an atheist swearing to God, that would mean nothing.
That's right. That's a good
But
point.
everybody has a life. So swear on your life. And yeah, that was her perfect way of explaining things.
That's a good deal. I was just thinking, it's Matthew, if a person is approaching this idea from either Matthew or the book of James, or let's just call it the view that emerged apparently in Second Temple Judaism, that basically says, just don't do it. Don't swear by anything. It is interesting that your sister or anyone's view to kind of circumvent the swearing to God is considered in that. Did you think about that? You've heard that it was said in ancient times, you should not swear falsely, but carry out your vows you've made to the Lord, which, by the way, is sort of a combining of Leviticus 19:12 and Numbers chapter 30, verse 2. So a lot of people miss that, but this writer, or Jesus, is quoting both of those. But I say to you, don't swear at all, either by heaven, for it's the throne of God, or the earth, it's his footstool, or by Jerusalem, the city of the great king. And don't swear by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let your yes be yes and your no, no. Anything more than that comes from bad or the evil one, however you read that. But the idea, though, I appreciate what you shared, because if a person doesn't believe in God, they could lie if they could say, Chai Yehovah, you want me to say Chai Yehovah? Okay, I'll say it. I'll put my hand on a Bible. Someone who doesn't believe that no skin in the game,
Exactly. Or the God that they do believe allows wickedness.
Yeah.
Because some gods do. They allow wickedness. As a matter of fact, it's a prerequisite to being quote unquote saved by that God. So yeah, she had a way with words. I give her that.
Sounds like it. The more I learn, more stories I hear, I'm starting to put some things together. It's good though.
Well, thank you. And Shabbat Shalom, and may you have a wonderful season of this holy high holidays.
Thank you very much, Nikita. Always good to hear from you. See you later.
See you later, dear.
Nadine is back. Hey, Nadine.
Hi. Something just came to my mind I wanted to share.
Okay.
It could be very naive, but when you're saying, the raised hand, and we also have God saying that he delivers us with an outstretched arm.
Mm.
Am I to think that the outstretched arm is a raised hand that would then relate to truth? Or maybe they're not disconnected, or they are disconnected.
Well, let's say this. It's certainly worth looking at. I'm going to look at it because what is the one thing that I spent a lot of time this morning talking about? God's oath is what? That he is going, and he says, I do with my hand raised, Deuteronomy 32:40 and so forth. Exodus chapter 6, verse 8. And then that phrase you just brought up, with an outstretched arm, I don't remember off the top of my head how many times it's used, but it's quite interesting. Jeremiah uses it. Deuteronomy uses it. So we need to look at that. I've kind of thought of it like, you're gathering them in, kind of outstretched arm. But what if it is like this? It could be. That's something to look at.
Okay, I'll look at that too. We'll compare notes.
All right, let's compare notes. Who knows? You may have found something. All right. If it is, maybe you can teach next Saturday. All right. Michael Gibson. Hello, Michael. Shabbat Shalom.
Hello, Ross. Shabbat Shalom.
Good to hear your voice, my friend.
It's good to hear you. I couldn't let this lesson on oaths go by without mentioning or discussing one of the most interesting, tragic, and mysterious characters or episodes in the Tanakh, and that is, to me, is the judge Jephthah.
Oh,
and his
goodness.
daughter.
Yeah.
And I ever since I've read it, I thought, well, how tragic that is, but you don't know what happened to his daughter, but he made that, it's like a cautionary tale about vows.
Yeah.
But I can't see how anybody would make a vow concerning whatever comes out of my house first. What did he think was going to come out?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Did he think his calf was going to come running out? Or,
right.
But anyway, it's if nothing else, it serves as a cautionary tale about making vows half-heartedly or without thinking.
The book of Judges, Michael, has some stories that give me cringe. It's like cringy. There are a couple of them. Remember the woman that was part of the Benjamin, and she's raped and she's cut up, and then you have the story of Jephthah. And the last couple of weeks, one thing I've been working on is the literature that scholars call the Deuteronomistic literature, written according to scholars by the same author. So you come out of Deuteronomy, you have Joshua, Judges, 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st, 2nd Kings. And a lot of people have put those texts at the hand of the same author, or the other view is that a single scribe or scribal school updated all of those texts. You have similarities in vocabulary that only exist in those 6 books. And so what I've done to kind of get that inside of me is I've listened to, as I've read all of those books. I've done it a couple of times now: Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st, 2nd Kings. And every time I get to the story of Jephthah, that's one of those that just makes you kind of cringe. It's a tough story. And I think you may be right. It could very well be, whether, people say, well, I believe it really happened. I'm not saying that it didn't. Whether it did or did not happen, even the way it's described, could it be that it's recorded to offer a cautionary tale that your word is very important? If you make a vow, if you swear, then you have to fulfill it. And I think either way, we tend to, I think in our culture today, modern day, we don't consider the word to be our word to be as important, and I think it should be. It goes back to what Nadine said: is what you're lying to me? I mean, have you ever? If someone lies to you, you're like, are you kidding me? What? I mean, it just infuriates. It should. Maybe sometimes I think we get used to it, that, but this is one of those stories that says, hey, you said it, you have to go through with it. So what do? Well, in a way, it goes back to the Matthew 5, the James 5. If you're not going to do it, then don't say it. And let me give you the other side of that. If you are going to do something like sacrifice whatever comes out of your door, then you shouldn't say it either. That's the idea. So maybe that kind of adds a little bit more credence to the idea of just don't make a vow if you're going to do that. I don't know.
Since I've been listening to your teachings, I've sort of begun to think, when I come to something like this, that I just cannot. I mean, you never really find out what, it's just left as a mystery as to whatever became of his daughter. And it makes me suspect that things like that may be, like I say, added purely as a cautionary tale.
Right. Could be.
I see that Carolyn Smith Kaiser put in, and I don't want to do your job reading the note, but she mentions Saul's oath about nobody eating anything until they were finished, and Jonathan, a similar situation.
Right. No, that's an excellent. In fact, I read from 1 Samuel 19. I believe it's 1 Samuel 19, verse 6 is where that story comes in. And that is an example. In fact, it's one of the examples that I use to demonstrate that the oath is, and Saul swore, as Jehovah lives. Whoever does this, it's that explicit. I mean, it's clearly it's one of those texts that shows us what that means to make that oath. And to Carolyn's point, Saul does not follow through with that. And I think he made whatever it's worth, I think he made the right decision here, because there are extenuating circumstances in that his son, Jonathan, didn't know that he made that vow. Now, let me give the caveat. He should not have made the vow, you see. He shouldn't have said, if anyone partakes of anything, as Jehovah lives, whatever. He should not have said that because, as it turns out, it's very similarly, like Carolyn points out, very similar to what we see in the story in Judges.
Yes, it's just better not to make a vow, just as Yeshua said, because you're better off not making a vow at all.
That's right. That's right. Just look, here's the deal. Just let your yes be yes and your no be no, and let that mean something, like on a very deep level. We should never we should never intend to mislead someone else, you know. And I know there are examples where people say, well, what about this? There are always situations that people can bring up, but we really should try to be honest and upright in all of our dealings. And, you know, it comes back to with teaching the Bible even, there are, and I never bring up other ministers or preachers. I mean, they have someone to answer to, and it certainly isn't me. But one thing that I have to grapple with is, well, I don't. I mean, you're receiving what I feel to be my understanding of what the texts say and what they're pointing us to. So I'm not going to mislead people. I'm not going to say, well, let me show you that there's no problems with this text. To me, that's being dishonest. It's one of the things that I've said quite a bit. I think a slogan, honest to Moses, honest to God, honest to the text of the Bible, that's where I'm at. And look, there are better ways to do it if you're trying to attract a large following. I'm telling you that there is an easier way to get friends and influence people. And that way is to simply tell people what they want to hear. And I can't do that. I won't do that. And so, you know, people might say, well, I had a minister friend of mine, not been a couple of years now, but he called me and he said, hey, people in my group are listening to you and I'm a little bit worried. I said, well, what are you worried about? He said, well, I'm wondering, you know, you could, let me just put it this way, this guy said, you could attract more people if you just didn't go all the time where you go. And I knew what the person was trying to say, but I let them continue in their agony to give me examples, and they did. And I said, well, you've got the wrong impression of me. You see, my goal is not to attract a certain number. My goal is to share what I understand to be what the Bible is really saying. And if people join up for that and know that they don't have to agree with me, that they can debate and they can argue and that we can together find things, I think that's the approach I want to take. This person is still a friend of mine. We still talk. But again, Michael, it goes back to, you know, truth is really what's important here, and being honest about these stories. As you said just a moment ago, you know, now that you're looking honestly at the text, there's some things that you have to say, you know, maybe that was added. It just doesn't ring true.
This is my opinion, my understanding is that if you do teach the way you said, you teach people what they want to hear or a falsehood, that is actually what is being talked about when it says, do not put a stumbling block in front of the blind.
Yeah.
I think that's what that actually means. People
Certainly
that are trying
could.
to find their way and you teach them a falsehood, you're putting a stumbling block in front of the blind. To me, that's what that means.
Well, it's certainly a good way to think about life, and it could very well be a metaphorical way to understand that, you know, because spiritually, I guess all of us, it might be at least farsighted or nearsighted. Maybe we're not blind spiritually, but we certainly we need glasses spiritually. And if somebody misleads someone, particularly on purpose, to sell things or to attract a following or to make money, look, that one of the New Testament texts that I've always considered to be pretty important, and I've always liked it, in James, where it says not everybody should raise their hand to be a teacher, you know. So
absolutely.
Good stuff. Michael, I always appreciate your comments, man. Good insight.
Thank you, Ross.
Hey, brother, have a good week.
You do the same.
Thank you. And Todd and Angel. All right.
All right.
Take us home, guys.
I'll do a little tap dance for you.
All right.
I was wanting to comment on what you were talking about last week about the about the prophet and everything. But unfortunately, since we had no power, I was doing it from the phone, and there's no hand raise option on the phone for some reason. I don't know why.
Okay.
But anyway, I did find it interesting how you're mentioning Isaiah and Jeremiah and all that of raising up a prophet, and I still could not get out of my head about Yeshua, because in John, when he says, so this is John 5:46 through 47. Let's see, where's it started? If you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote about me. But if you do not believe what he wrote, how will you believe what I say?
Mm-hmm.
And that was, that's coming out of the same one you got there, the annotated.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was just thinking, man, I don't have to just. I don't.
We
have
got one
to,
for ourselves too.
Yeah, I love that Bible.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
And then also and this hit me yesterday, when they were at the wedding in chapter 2, verse 10 of John. It's interesting when the governor of the feast says, everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk, but you have kept the good wine until now. And that to me is basically him saying, yes, we had the other prophets that came before, but now you've saved the best till now. And it just, I don't know, just way my brain thinks sometimes. But
I can follow. I know where you're going.
Yeah. So I don't know. The way I kind of think about it, I've just always thought it was Yeshua that he was referring to when he says, out of your people, I will raise a prophet. And that's just how I've always taken it.
You're certainly not alone in that. And not only do the text indicate that Jesus is the one, if you follow this through, that's the one that was looked forward to.
Right.
But you do get the idea that was certainly one of the expectations in the Second Temple period. While you're in the Gospel of John, remember there are things like, hey, are you the person? Are you the prophet? When it says the prophet, What are they talking about? Well, clearly
John the Baptist.
Yeah, they're talking about this prophet, see, the one that was expected to come, the one like Moses. So there is that idea. I think, last week's class, when I talked about this idea of the one that's the prophet who's to come and so forth, and you break down the different terms, whether that term, prophet like Moses, whether that is a later, and it does appear to be, at least that terminology appears to be later, but it certainly doesn't mean that by the time the Second Temple rolls around, particularly in the time of Jesus, that idea wasn't picked up, and they were expecting this one, and they call it, if you say, well, what are you talking about? They'd say a Navi, because that's the term for prophet like Moses. So you would expect, therefore, for that person, whoever that is, to fulfill that certain things that Moses did. I guess a prophet like Moses. Now, one of the things that I'm just thinking, some ideas are crossing my mind. I mentioned sometime back, I don't even know if it can still be found. I've done a lot of classes over the years, and I've written a lot of papers, but some of them are lost or old websites, who knows. But I did something called the Deity of Moses. And let me write this down. Hold on. Because sometimes, you get an idea and you think, man, I'm going to push this out again. Maybe I'll even get into this next week. There is a prophetic style, and I'm going to your Jesus question in a minute, where you get the idea in the biblical text that a prophet is speaking differently than a normal person like me, okay? So I'm not a prophet, and if I teach, whether I teach a good class or a bad class, whatever, but it still doesn't, even if I teach a perfect class every week, and I know I don't, I'm still not a prophet. Even though I say some things that are very important and I'm reading from the Bible, I'm still not a prophet, you see.
Right.
So, and I don't claim to be. But here's the thing. There's something about the way that these prophets speak where they shift into a certain mode of speech. And I've taught on this before, but one time I taught a class that I called the deity of Moses because I gave examples where Moses and then subsequently other prophets spoke first person as if they're God, right? And I think maybe I'll do that. Maybe if not this week, then a future class real soon. Because what if you get to the New Testament? Here's one thing that happens, and everybody is in a different place. The reason I love this group so much is because we have people who say, "Well, I thought I was done with the New Testament," but they're still nice and they'll listen and they're okay with not running off yet. So stick with me. There are texts that say, when Jesus spoke, John chapter 7, it says he speaks, I don't remember if it's John at 7, where he speaks with authority, not like the scribes.
Mm-hmm.
He speaks differently. Never has a man spoke like this, I think is the way it's put. Well, that's not really true. Men have spoken like that, and they were by a certain title. They were called prophets. And what happens is the person speaking is speaking just like I'm speaking, and then the Spirit of God enters into that person, even in the Hebrew Bible, and they change their speech. Let me give you an example. You may know this already, but let me give you an example, and if I teach it this coming Saturday, you just have to act like you didn't already know it and say,
Know
"Ooh,
what?"
nah." That's right. There you go. Look at Deuteronomy 29. I'll give you one example, and then I'll tie this back to your point. Deuteronomy 29:1, these are the words of the covenant that the Lord commanded Moses to make with the Israelites in the land of Moab, in addition to the covenant that he made with them at Horeb. That's a narrator, right? It's clear. And then it continues. Moses summoned all Israel and said to them, now you got quotes. This is Moses speaking. You ready? You have seen all that the Lord did before your eyes in the land of Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his servants and to all his land, the great trials that your eyes saw, the signs and those great wonders. But to this day, the Lord has not given you a mind to understand or eyes to see or ears to hear. I've led you 40 years in the wilderness. Your clothes have not worn, your clothes on your back have not worn out, and the sandals on your feet have not worn out. You've not eaten bread, and you've not drunk wine or strong drink, so that you might know that I am Jehovah your God. That's Moses speaking.
Mm-hmm.
But something clearly has happened. Something clearly has happened where the prophet is speaking. You guys, we've been going 40 years in the wilderness, and your shoes are still good, and your clothes and so forth and so on, that you might know that I am Jehovah. Someone in the crowd could have said, what did he just say? Well, I believe that what we find in these occurrences of prophets is a form of speech that typically your average person would not do. Somebody who doesn't, who's not told by God to do it is not going to, you ain't going to fake this. I'm saying you shouldn't. So in the New Testament, perhaps, this is a perhaps, what we get is if Jesus of Nazareth is the prophet for that generation, and some people believe he is, some people believe he isn't. Some people threw it out with the bathwater kind of thing.
Right.
But could it be, this is just a question I would encourage people to think about, could it be that the example that we have, at least the writers are saying, this sounds a whole lot like that. So could they be saying that Moses wrote about me? Now, there are a lot of people who get into finding Jesus on every page of the Hebrew Bible. That's not me. In fact, people say, well, the tabernacle, that's a picture of Jesus and types and shadows. And, you can go crazy with that.
Yeah, I've heard all that too.
in fact, I've often said the two things that you really need to tackle if you want to do that is start with the things that he said were him in the Torah, and then build from there. Bread and a serpent that was lifted in the wilderness. What does that mean, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, it's just interesting when he says, I'll lift up a prophet like Moses. Well, what did Moses do? He gave the law.
mm-hmm.
And as far as you and I have talked, I'm sure other people on here have questioned too. We question what was the law. Just because it's written down in the Bible doesn't mean that's what Moses gave them. But what Yeshua did when he in his ministry, he told the truth of the law because it had become so out of whack with man's traditions and everything else. He kind of settled it back to where it's supposed to be. So in a way, to me, that's kind of similar to what Moses did. Moses originally brought it. Throughout time, it got added on, taken out, whatever, and then Yeshua comes and says, you've heard it said this, but I tell you this.
Yeah.
It's like he's bringing it back. So to me, that just kind of, I don't know. It's just, that's
well,
just
it's certainly worth considering. And then if I know you're familiar with the Ebionites and so forth.
Yes.
If you, I know you are because of things that you've said in the Clementine literature and things you guys have looked at. But when you look at things like the Ebionite literature, they were doing what we're doing when it comes to the Pentateuch. They said that there were certain things which were added later. And you said, well, Ebionite, sir, what are those? And they would say the temple, the sacrifices, the monarchy,
Yep.
and they would talk about those things that were not that way from the beginning. And I think that it's important that we consider that. Now, a lot of people who throw the proverbial baby out with the bathwater and they walk away from Christianity and they despise it, like a smoker who lays down cigarettes and doesn't want to be around it anymore, and they're like, oh my goodness, Ross just quoted. I get letters. You quoted from Matthew and I'll have nothing to do with you ever again. Well, join the club of people that don't want anything to do with Ross. I get letters like that every week. It's getting to where they don't hurt as bad, But the idea, though, is that it's time for us to consider what was that authentic message. And I relate to people that try to bring us back to that. Mm-hmm. And if that's people like Jesus of Nazareth and James the Just and these Ebionites who talked about, there's this saying in the Clementine literature about true and false coins, how how do you identify it? It's almost like what Michael just said a few minutes ago. There's some things you read it and you go, I hate to think this, but that never happened. There are things that we read in the scripture and we just think, that somebody right next to us is going to say, how dare you? And they want to say I'm bad for questioning things that seem impossible or ridiculous. But what if it's those of us who are seeking to uncover the truth, who are willing to be very prayerful and considering of these different texts? What if it's us who are the ones who are standing on the side of Moses, and not adding to or taking away from? The adding to already happened, So I think maybe that's just some of my thoughts, a little bit out there, but. So if you're good, I consider you both good friends. And, if you think about it, my primary focus is on the Hebrew Bible, clearly. And I have friends that are in different places. Some are Christians, some are Jews, some are this, some are that, whatever. But I'm willing as a historian and a man of faith to look at these texts and say, that's some good stuff. That whether it's from New Testament or whatever. So
it's like one of the guys at work that I once in a while will discuss the Bible with and everything. And he mentioned the other day, he's like, we kind of got on the law, which he's a Christian, so it tells you where he's at.
Yeah.
And everything. And I can't remember exactly how the conversation exactly went, but I do remember him looking at me going, so you just decided you're just going to just accept whatever you want to accept and, discern whatever you want to discern and everything else. I told him, I said, let me ask you this. What is so wrong with me wanting to know what the truth is?
Yeah.
And he just looked at me. I told him, I said, well, you just answered my question.
Mm-hmm.
And to get to what you just said a minute ago about your preacher friend and what he was saying to you, and, you ought to do this, you ought to do that, and you're talking about the truth, those who know the truth and everything else. A perfect example was, we both were we actually were sitting apart from each other at the funeral, and which is unusual for us, but we're kind of separated by a few feet. To listen to the preacher give the sermon,
Yeah.
and all you gotta do is just confess his name, and we will be with him. And I was gritting my teeth, and I happened to look over her, and she was actually wiping tears out of her eyes. I didn't know if it was over Mom or what it was, but she said it was mainly because it was a lie. And she was thinking of all these people that are hearing this, and I'm going, yep, that's all you got to do. And all I could think of was, that's a cop-out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just aggravating.
Well, and one of the things that I think we can all relate to, that this group of people who've studied themselves into the place that we currently are, I think all of us are pretty much in the same place. But,
Yeah.
you look at the message of Yeshua as these texts record, and most of those texts would agree with our view. It's like you go, well, how do you inherit eternal life? Keep the commandments. How long is, well, as long as heaven and earth. You're like, well, that sounds a whole lot different. Whereas what people would see, you go, well, how would this preacher you're talking about say that you inherit eternal life? Well, he would say you must be born again. Well, how are you born again? Well, you have to, and they give these definitions. But if you say, well, how are you born again? Somebody says, well, you have to believe that Jesus died, was raised for you. You say, well, wait a minute. Jesus told a teacher in his day about being born again, and he said, you're a teacher in Israel and you don't know what this means, and he wasn't dead yet. So what is that?
Yeah.
In other words, there are things that we have to now, like for me, I put all of it on a shelf and I just walked away from it. I mean, I did it respectfully, and I said, look, I'm going to focus on the Hebrew Bible, and that's what I do. But nonetheless, a lot of things fire off in my head, and I go, what about that? What was that really what he's saying? I mean, there's some things that for me, I think I have to go back and look at and consider and think. Now, I know there'll be people that write me now and say, oh, I'm done with Ross. I can't.
Here we go.
Here we go. Anyway, but I do know what you're saying. And the other thing that's difficult at funerals, you already lost someone that you love. They've passed, and you're there, and someone uses that opportunity. I don't know about this case, but a lot of times that, people are vulnerable, they're hurting, and they, so sometimes those are some of the worst sermons, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So, but I'm glad that you guys are, I guess, when was the funeral? Last week or week before?
It's Tuesday.
Okay.
Tuesday.
Well, my prayers are still with you guys, and I know these are difficult days, but we do, no matter what faith orientation we ascribe to, I think that all of us do believe that we do serve a God who can comfort over time, and that's what I pray for you guys. So,
Just like I was telling her, I thought it was kind of ironic. Of course, she's been here about 6 years?
7 years.
About 7 years, and I remember when we started doing the Sabbath, she made a comment. Well, y'all Jewish now? No, but it does say forever throughout your generations. It's in the 10 Commandments. I mean, it's well, that's not what they teach us in church. I've been doing this for so long. I'm not changing now.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's ironic the day she passed away was on the Sabbath.
Oh, really? Entered her eternal rest, as we say.
Yep. So well, now you're resting. So we got to say about that now.
Well.
Yeah. But yeah, she was always, and of course and she never let it rest. She was always, well, why are y'all doing this? Why are y'all doing this?
It is, and just because I know that I've been through things and put people around me through, God only knows. But it is difficult. It's difficult when I talk to people quite a bit who, they were Christian and very active in the church, and they brought their kids up in it, and then they reach a place where they no longer go to church and they're in a different place. And, and then they say, well, my kids are, they don't believe like me and they're doing this and the holidays, it's difficult. Well, guess what? We built that, so I've kind of gotten to the place where I want people to know, and I teach every week, at least once a week, sometimes more. I want people to know what I understand the scriptures to say, but I'm also very, very patient with the people who are in a different place than me, because I've been in most of the places they're at. I've been wrong way more times than I've ever been right. Yeah. And I think the more that I can understand that and admit it, even if I don't say it out loud, the easier it is for me to understand people who say things like, your mom or whatever, where it's like, well, I've been doing this way and I'm not going to change. And think about all the texts which tell us, hold strong, be steady. Don't, they're going to be a falling away. And here we are saying, let me tell you this thing that I figured out. So anyway, I get it. I understand. It's difficult in both sides. And I think it's incumbent on us in this group. And I think that's why I love the fact that people are so open, is that we're all trying to figure this out. I have people that are in different places, and for the most part, they get along good, right?
Yeah. Well, one of the answers I always give to somebody whenever I get into a conversation with a Christian or whatever, I just throw some stuff out here and there. I don't get, this is how it is, or this is the way we think, or anything like that. I throw snippets here and there, and if it starts getting negative on their side, my comment to them is always, it's okay. Everyone has their own speed in their walk.
Yeah.
Some are faster, some are slower.
That's right.
And there's never a comment after I say that. They're just kind of like, huh?
Yeah.
Like, well, everybody has their own walk. Everybody does their own thing.
Yeah, it's like Abraham. Abram is called Lech Lecha, walk for yourself and go to a place that I'll show you. I like to use that one because you can't walk another person's walk and understand. People go, well, where are you going with this, Ross? Well, if I knew that, then everybody would either join or not join, but I don't know. Abram didn't know. God said, no. Go to a place I'll show you. That would be a perfect opportunity for Abram to say, I want to do this. I really do, because I'm kind of a law follower, but I kind of need to know where this is going, but he didn't. He just said, let's load up the donkeys. So that's what I tell all my friends. Load up the donkeys, Todd.
Load them up, throw a carrot in front of their face, and go on.
Let's go. That's right. Hey,
or
good stuff.
Carrot stick or something.
That's right. Good stuff. Well, we've been going for a couple of hours, and I appreciate everyone's participation and patience, and I look forward to hopefully over the next week or so, more and more people. I invite you to come into. We've got a few people that do most of the writing and things on our Discord. But if you're part of our Discord, jump in, write some articles, post some, you can write a sentence or a paragraph, invite people to come in and discuss things. So let's see what we can come up with. So who knows what next week's class is going to be? I don't yet. But, one thing that I'll consider is that taking this idea of the prophet a little bit further. I've taught many times on the monarchy. I think that's a real important thing in Deuteronomy, but I've got some already good videos that are easy to find on that. So we'll see. I should know something. I have to know something because Thursdays is usually when we put a newsletter out. So between now and then, I promise to come up with something. Without a vow, I promise to come up with something. Hey, it's been fun. Beautiful day, and I hope that all of you have a wonderful week. Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov. Hey, help us spread this message if you feel so inclined. Share it on social media, and it's good to see all of your smiling faces. God bless you all, and I will see you next time. Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov.